Okay, everybody, so let's get started. My name is Joyce Raimondo. I'm the education coordinator at the Pollock Krasner House and Study Center. And today's program is part of our Celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month in the United States. And we're going to focus today on Siqueiros, one of the most important Mexican muralists who was a very strong influence on Pollock and therefore a very strong influence on modern artists going forward. So we're going to combine a discussion of Siqueiros' work, and then we're going to try some of his techniques, okay? And I am in the National Landmark today. I was going to take you into the barn to show you Pollock's studio, but the internet wasn't working great in there, so we'll save that towards the end. We'll see if I can go in there. Kept cutting out in there. Okay, so welcome everyone. So we're going to start with a little screen share, and I am going to invite you to give your opinion about what you see in the artwork. So this is an informal discussion. So okay, so the three great Mexican muralists are Diego Rivera, Jose Clemente Orozco, and I'm going to try to pronounce it correctly, David Alfaro Siqueiros. That was the best I could do on that Spanish accent. But anyway, all of these muralists were involved with social realism. So it was really art for the people. It was public art, murals done in public places to convey a very strong political message. So today we're going to focus on Siqueiros. And what was really unique about Siqueiros is the experimental techniques that he used to create his art. So he was born in 1896, died in 1974, and he was born in Mexico, but he did work in the United States as well as Spain, and he was fervently political. So he often was exiled and even imprisoned for his political views. He was a fervent communist. So this is an example. Well, before we get to this, I just want to ask you a question. He was commissioned in the United States in California to create a mural called Tropical America. So I'm going to throw out a question, and there's no right or wrong answers. What comes to mind when you think of tropical America? What sorts of images would you conjure up in your imagination? Anyone? You can just unmute.
Palm trees.
Palm trees.
Palm trees. And Joyce, what else?
Hawaii.
Hawaii. Okay, good. And what other kinds of images?
Lots of sunlight and light blue water.
Oh, this sounds wonderful. Sounds very pleasant, right? Anybody else? Maybe colorful flowers, maybe women wearing colorful dresses, that sort of thing. So he was commissioned to, what else?
Animals.
Beauty?
Animals, like tigers and things that go in the jungle.
Yeah, okay, good. So he was commissioned, and that was the theme. And I suppose he didn't submit a sketch because to the surprise of the people who commissioned him, this is what he came up with. So I'm going to show you a close-up of this. This mural was censored and it was immediately whitewashed, okay? So I'm going to show you like a reproduction of it, of what it would have looked like. And this is what he did. This is completely different than what we imagined, right? So let's decode this mural. Let's start with the figure in the center. What comes to mind when you look at that figure?
That's crucifixion, isn't it?
Sacrifice.
Sacrifice, crucifixion, good. And I'll show you a close-up in a moment. Now look all around the figure. What do you see? What could those two purplish things be, those cylinders?
Drums.
Mm-hmm. How about the building around that figure?
The Aztec temple.
A temple. Okay, good. Anyone else notice anything else?
There's the men, I think, with rifles on the
Yes,
right
very
side?
good. So let's take a close-up look at some of the details here. So this figure, which looks like a crucifix, is an indigenous Mexican peasant. He's lashed to a cross, right? Above him is the symbol of the American eagle. When we think of America, when we think of the American eagle, what comes to mind? What sorts of words do you think of when you think of the American eagle?
Isn't it freedom?
And what else? Nobody has any associations with, is anyone American here from the United States of America?
Equal opportunity. Equal opportunity.
Thank you. Okay, equal opportunity. What else? I think of, the eagle, I think of power and strength, right? Anybody else?
Predator.
Okay. What else?
Predator.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Predator.
I don't know why I can't understand that. Does somebody else understand what that person? Can you say?
Predator.
Someone who
Predator.
Oh, a predator. A
Predator.
predator of
I'm
what?
saying it wrong, sorry.
No, very good. What do you mean by a predator? Can you go further with that?
They're hunting, they're attacking, the big tall ones to kill. So it's, it's like what the Americans did when they came in. Europeans came in and enslaved and the population in Mexico.
Yes.
Of course, I guess at the time of the Aztecs.
With this, yes, the Spanish conquistadors, and in the United States, the English and the Dutch and the Europeans.
Yeah.
Now, what is the statement that Siqueiros is making here? He has an indigenous Mexican peasant on a cross with the symbol of the eagle, the symbol of American imperialism, over the peasant. What is he getting at?
That the peasants are subjugated to the Americans.
Anybody else? Yeah.
They're being
they're being what?
They're being sacrificed, like them use, they have them working in the mines and they treat them like, well, I guess slaves, but worse.
Yeah, well, I mean, in this country, in the United States, of course, first off, disease was brought over, so many of the indigenous people died. And of course, they were pushed westward onto reservations. And even here in the Hamptons, we have a reservation. They were given land at time, and then it was taken away unjustly. And there were many, of course, they were slaughtered, right? Through war, they were conquered. And also there were many other injustices, for example, taking their children and putting them in schools where they were not allowed to learn the religion of their ancestors. They had to learn Christianity, and they were separated from their parents, really horrific things like this, okay? So, and they were conquered. So this is a real surprise to the people. We all thought tropical America was going to be this pretty tropical vision, right? This is completely different. This is a very political, highly political statement, right? And it's for the peasant. It's for the indigenous people. And then he also has the revolutionaries in the right-hand corner. And we can see they even appear to be Mexican revolutionaries, right? So the Mexican Revolution in 1910 overthrew the imperialists who were corrupt, and it was a movement to put the power back to the people, so to speak, distribute wealth more evenly. Now, what's interesting with Siqueiros is that not only was he was invested in the idea, not only with the imagery being a political message to a very wide audience, but he also used techniques that you might say are experimental. And he is a master at the mural making, because when you make a mural, the viewer is going to be seeing it from different viewpoints. They might be way on the left side of the room, the right side of the room, close up, far away. And Siqueiros would design his murals with this in mind, almost like you're moving, and you could say it's like a film, you're moving through it, and it's going to be changing as you move because your perspective is going to distort it. So he would often use projectors, and he would compensate or design the entire mural with the viewer in mind. He also, as you notice, he painted the floor, which is very unusual. Now I see, Martin, is this the one that's in Argentina near where you live? I'm just curious.
Yes, yes, this has a story, but I go one and I'll tell you later if you want.
No, tell me, right, tell everybody.
Well, everybody, there is a website from the government, because this belongs to the Argentinian now, where you can be in the place. Yes, with in internet you can be inside this room. This was made by Siqueiros and 4 other artists in the year that says there 1933, and it was a playroom in a basement in a house outside the city. Yeah, and well, the room is painted on top. Yes, the floor, the walls, and it's like you are inside a crystal box into the sea. Okay, so you are there like you are into crystal box. So if you want, I later I can show you because in the website, or I can put the link and you can visit.
Yeah,
Anyone
that
can
sounds
enter
really
and
good.
visit, because
Mhm.
this is in a museum, so you have to go like in Pollock's museum with the sleepers and everything. You can go in there and visit this room.
That sounds amazing. What city is it?
This is in a museum next to the Pink House, which is our White House. Let's say in America, where we have the Pink House, where the president is. So next to it there is a museum, a Byzantine museum, and there you can visit it. This room is mounted inside a museum.
Oh, very good. Thank you so much. That's the advantages of being on this international Zoom. That's fantastic.
I have to
Martin.
say that I haven't visited yet.
Oh my gosh, now you have a homework assignment to visit this. Of course, when you see these murals in real life, it's a completely different experience because you are in a physical surrounded by the art.
Yeah.
What's interesting also, Martin's point is well taken, that this was done collectively in a group. And this was a very important core value of Siqueiros, the idea of doing the art collectively, not individually.
Yes, and this has in particular that it has no political context. It's the only work that Siqueiros did that doesn't have any political context. Yeah.
And I think this was one of his earliest murals as well.
Maybe, but he was teaching many of the artists here that even that helped him with this work were muralists later. Yes, they did murals after Siqueiros.
Yeah, thank you. This is a painting that's at the Museum of Modern Art. So what do you see here when you look at this image? It's pain, right? It's the echo of a scream. And it looks like destruction, perhaps from war. And we can put this art within the context of the time in 1937. What's happening in the world in 1937?
World War II.
What's that?
War.
Yes, we're approaching World War II. It's the rise of Nazism and fascism in general. And it's also post-World War I, although later. But this is really a very frightening and devastating time for the world, right? So Siqueiros is responding to these circumstances, these political circumstances. In some ways, Jackson Pollock was too, but Jackson Pollock had a completely different motivation. This is Portrait of the Bourgeois, right? So it's very detailed. It's hard to see on such a small screen, but we could see the greed of the bourgeois, the money, right? The corruption, the abuse of power, the frightening mass, right? This mural, and I'm sorry I don't have the label for it, it's a little blurry, but this is a good example of his innovation where the mural is actually 3 dimensions. He also worked on unusual surfaces like metal or cement, and sometimes he would also put cement into the mural. And so that's a key point today. If you want to work on an unusual surface, you don't have to work on paper or canvas. You might find something around your house to work on. So let's talk a little bit about Siqueiros and Pollock. So Siqueiros, after working in California and that mural comes down, he comes to New York City and he starts his experimental workshop. And this is a collective workshop where he invites young artists, he recruits young artists to create art for the people. And Siqueiros was Mexican. He was not able to secure a lease because of prejudice. So Harold Lehman, the American muralist who worked with Siqueiros, signed the lease for him. So let's see, what is Siqueiros' manifesto for this workshop? Key point is experimentation. Research technical aspects of art. So study the relationship between classical and modern techniques of art creation and the corresponding epochs. New art production techniques for modern times, okay? So for Siqueiros, he was interested in not only creating imagery that was anti-fascist, but also finding techniques for a new era. The old classical techniques were no longer sufficient. We have to forge forward in modern time, new techniques for a new time. So the idea of using these experimental techniques had a political meaning. And we'll go over in a moment what some of these techniques were. He also produced with his group public forms of works of art that are understood and accessible to the general public. So for example, a mural, a parade float, even characters that were, people, characters specific that people would understand and be easily able to reference. Working and studying collectively in an environment without hierarchy. Now, this is interesting because you wonder, well, when he says without hierarchy, that everybody has an equal voice, an equal say in what's being produced. But of course, we would wonder, well, was he completely able to turn that over to the people in his workshop? That's a pretty hard thing to do, but it was a core value, this idea of working collectively. So that's a big difference, isn't it, between Siqueiros and Pollock. Pollock was not working collectively. Pollock was influenced by all these artists, but he worked alone in the studio. He did not work collaboratively on his art. So here we see the meeting in the workshop, Birth of Fascism, in 1936. And here we see a May Day parade float. And there was actually, well, this is Hitler, but you could say in some ways there is a humorous aspect, but it's really not funny. It's dark humor, where there was a rod that would hit Hitler as the parade, as the float moved. This is something that, as you can see, it's art for the people. Also, sometimes Siqueiros would, he had Pollock and all of the other people in the workshop take their handprints and print them onto the float. So it was symbolic of the collective. But if you think about it also, this idea of using your hands to imprint is in and of itself an experimental technique that later appears in Pollock's work, where you can actually see Pollock's handprint, okay? And Jackson Pollock is pictured in the picture on the left. So here we see the use of the spray gun, right? So he's using a spray gun is typically not a fine art tool, right? At least in that time. And so Siqueiros is using industrial techniques. Now, if you don't have a spray gun, who can tell us what could you use instead of a spray gun to get a spraying technique? There's lots of different answers for this. Anyone? If you want to do this at home and you don't have a spray gun.
Hey Joyce, sometimes I use acrylic ink and I will blop it onto my paper and then use like a spray bottle, a water bottle to just spread it. And it gets you kind of random crazy patterns.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. And I'd love to demonstrate that today, but I learned my lesson. The last time I did this workshop, like about a year ago, I had spray paint all over my computer. It was too hard to do on Zoom. So we're just going to discuss the techniques. I'm not going to demonstrate. Yes, absolutely. You could use a spray bottle. If you're working outdoors or you have the setup, you could use spray paint, right? And if you want to take it up a notch, you could also use an airbrush. And you could also get a spraying effect by using a toothbrush and flicking the paint off the toothbrush. You get a nice spraying technique as well. And it's a lot of fun to do. And actually, if you look, shows a lot of Siqueiros' experimental techniques. This is at the Museum of Modern Art. And on the lower right, you see the conquistadors on horseback. And those images were repeated using a frisket or stencil. So you can take the best material to get for a stencil is material that's designed for stencils that's like plastic, right? And you cut out that shape with an X-Acto knife. And then you can spray through it with any of the materials that we just named. You let it dry and then you remove the stencil, and you could repeat the same shape over and over. And it's a lot of fun to do. You can really get very experimental with it, the way you overlap the use of the stencil. Okay. So there's something else that's unusual about this image. You see those two shapes on the left and right? Those were made with raised plywood. So the entire painting is made on plywood, which is not a traditional art material. And he also has these different levels on the painting. So that's something today. Can anyone think of an unusual material you could use for the surface of your art? Anyone? Maybe even something you have laying around the house.
Cardboard.
Yeah, you could use even corrugated cardboard could be nice.
Bristol board?
What is it?
Bristol board.
Yeah, that's a little more traditional, Joyce, because that is an art material. Okay. Yeah, but it's a good art material. It's not, I wouldn't say it's not traditional.
I'm trying to think of something, and that's all I could think about.
Okay. You know, you could get a scrap of wood, for example. I have scraps of shingles in my basement. I took a surface and I spray painted it with sand spray paint, and that's really cool. It makes a nice texture. So you could use, somebody the other day used a paper towel. You could use just about anything to make art, right? So you do it with a spirit of play. Siqueiros, as you could see in the center, it looks like it was poured and marbleized. And sometimes he would also tilt the surface, so the paint would flow in different directions, right? And there's many ways you could do marbleizing techniques. One is using two materials where oil and water don't mix, right? So if you put an oil paint in a water paint, they're going to separate. and then you could swirl it around. You could even move it around with a stick. You could do marbleizing also by putting paint in a cup, layer it in there, and then very slowly pour it out so that you get layers of marbleized paint, and then you can tilt it and so on, okay? But the idea behind this is that Siqueiros was interested in the accidental. This was a big trajectory in his creativity. You want to let the paint flow and drip and pour so that you invite the accidental. You could also see where he sprayed above that area. And then in the upper left, you could see when throughout the top part, it appears that he dripped the paint, right? Sometimes he would actually puncture a hole in the cup or the can and let the paint drip through that way. He would also use sticks, and Pollock, of course, used sticks. So this artwork, even though it uses all these techniques, it's not an abstract artwork. There are recognizable images. It looks a little like hell, and you see these conquistadors. And then you see on the left, if you look really closely, there's like a procession of people heading towards the left of the painting. And those are the indigenous people who, rather than submit to the conquistadors in battle, killed themselves collectively by drowning. So it's a horrible, horrific scene. Now, Pollock at this time is working with Siqueiros, and you start to see Pollock's work open up. Pollock says Thomas Hart Benton was a strong personality to react against. So Pollock had been studying under Benton, and he was doing scenes that were pretty realistic and painting from observation. He did his famous painting Going West that shows the covered wagon going west, but this is completely different. You can see what's happening in Pollock's work here. Anyone? How would you describe this painting? Anything you notice? There's no right or wrong answers. What do you see here?
It's like two forces are getting ready to fight each other. Like the red almost looks like a dragon.
Good point,
and
Joyce.
the gray looks like a rabid dog. But now that I look at it, it's there's a cow there. Skeletal cow. Yeah.
Yeah,
So that's what I see.
Yeah, you see skeletal images in there. Of course, that's open to interpretation, but you use the word forces, which is interesting because eventually Pollock says it's energy made visible. So his work is expressing movement and energy and forces, right? The force of energy. And then we see these experimental techniques here, what appears to be spraying and dripping and swiping and swooshing and scraping. So the painting, you could say it becomes much more physical. There's a physical release of energy. And eventually this leads to abstract expressionism in the United States of America, in New York. So here we start to see Pollock's work eventually opens up. It becomes more abstract, and also he's indicating movement with the drip of the paint, right? He's becoming an action painter. And eventually in the barn studio, he places the painting on the floor, and he is 100% using experimental techniques. He's using a bucket of house paint instead of art paint. He's using his brush as a stick, dripping it in the air above the painting. He's not even touching the painting with the paintbrush or anything for that matter. He would sometimes use the can stirrer to drip the paint as well. And it's very unusual. He takes the painting off the easel and places it on the floor. So he has this in common with Siqueiros. Siqueiros moved away from traditional easel painting, but Pollock did it in his own way. Pollock is working from all four sides, right? There's no top and bottom as he's painting. So all of this is really revolutionary. Now he places the painting on the floor for a practical reason. The gravity pulls the paint down, and he can work from all four sides. He says he even wants to be in the painting. But unlike Siqueiros, Pollock doesn't say, oh, this is accidental. Pollock actually says, I can control the flow of paint. Now, how do you control the flow of paint when you're dripping paint? Well, I think by repetition, you become a master at dripping paint. So for example, you might intuitively understand, if I hold this stick close to the canvas as I drip, I'm going to get one type of mark. If I hold it way up high, something else is going to happen. What happens if I move it fast or slow, or put thicker paint on or thinner, things like this, okay? But it's not like he's analyzing it. It becomes just very intuitive. But I think he says I can control the flow of paint, but of course, just like all painting, there's going to be some spontaneous accident, so to speak, as well. A key idea with Pollock is this idea of improvisation and personal expression. So Pollock says, I want to express my feelings rather than illustrate them, right? He says painting is self-discovery. What does that mean? How do you discover yourself when you're painting? Anyone? Anyone ever have that feeling or experience when you're making art?
Well, when you step back after you make it, you can, like you can see that whether you're angry about life or something is good happening. So yeah, it reflects. Well, he can look at it and reflect back to him that,
Yeah, absolutely. Because you're one in the moment of the process, and he's painting intuitively with no preconceived idea of what's going to come out. So it's really an adventure. It's discovery. It's not control. Although he says I can control the flow of paint, but it's in an improvisational, intuitive way. He's not copying a sketch. He's not controlling the actual outcome. He doesn't even have a theme in mind or a title. He titles them after. Now, there are similarities between Pollock and Siqueiros. They're both using industrial materials. They're both using, non-traditional techniques, right? Also, Siqueiros would sometimes embed the painting with cement or other, what Pollock called foreign matter. Pollock also would sometimes put sand and broken glass into his painting. And he was always changing up. He didn't only do these drip paintings once he started doing them. He was always trying new techniques. Sometimes Pollock would cut up his paintings and cut out shapes from them, or as I said, put different collage materials in there and experiment with different colors, all sorts of things. So that is sort of the tenet of abstract expressionism, right? And also it's very, very physical. But Pollock was on a quest for, it was an internal drive. It was an inner self-discovery. Pollock is not thinking about communism and politics and all these things as he's painting, right? However, it is 1950, it's post-World War II, and the entire world changes at that time, right? This is a break. It's almost like COVID. It's a major global change. It's a disruption. And in that way, the art also reflects a disruption, right? In past art. It forges ahead. It's groundbreaking, revolutionary art. And in my opinion, it speaks to the value in the United States of America, the value of democracy and freedom of expression. I love taking children around the Pollock House who are immigrants and just came to this country, because I feel like it sets a really good example of what do we mean by expression, right? And that we value, I hope, in this country, I hope that we value freedom of expression. And I hope that is maintained with dignity and the freedom for other people to express themselves when we don't all share the same opinion. I hope we can do that with civility, but art is a very good forum for that. So Any questions? Okay, I hope this gives you some inspiration. So, oh, wait a minute, I just realized something, hang on. Let's just go over and review some of these techniques. Where did it go? Oh, here it is, okay. I put the thing in the wrong. Okay, so these are some things you could try either all at once or just, you might want to jot this down or take a screenshot to try at a later time. So stenciling, okay, that's a technique. Poured paint, whether you use a stick or poured paint directly out of the can like Helen Frankenthaler, but the idea of pouring, and then you could tilt the painting and things like that as well. Spraying paint, as we mentioned, unusual surfaces to paint on, adding foreign matter. This could be really fun. Like I like to put glitter in my paint, actually. You could put sand, you can put anything you want in your paint. Scraping. You can use things to scrape away like a fork or a stick or a comb. And then you can also come up with any other unusual tools. You could even use a toilet paper roll, cardboard roll to stamp, for example, right? Or as I said, a toothbrush. So the possibilities are endless. If you look around your house, what could you use as a tool to paint? You could also try impasto, where you put paint on with a knife and you build it up, and then you scrape away at the thick paint. Okay? Any questions or any ideas that somebody wants to add or tips? Anyone? Okay, I'm sorry I'm not going to demonstrate. It's a little too messy. I learned my lesson. It was hilarious. It was like paint was going all over. And I was like, this is not working out. So I am going to let you learn for yourself and just experiment and see what you come up with. Okay. For beginners, when you're working with a lot of different colors, just for the very new beginners, if you do these experimental techniques and you mix like too many colors together, you're going to get like a sort of muddy color. So be aware of that as you paint so it doesn't get too muddy. Okay. And how about we'll regroup in about, we have some time in like 10, 15 minutes. Okay. And then if we have time, Martin, at the end, you can show us the video as well. All right. And I'll see if the internet's working in there in the barn. So, okay, I'm going to turn off my camera and I'll be back in about 10 minutes. I'm here, but I'll check back in. Matter. Oh, right. Okay, if anyone has anything you'd like to share, let me know. But we do have time. I can check back in a few minutes. Anyone? Joyce? Martin?
I'm always like, okay. Ugh.
Very nice, Joyce. How did you do that?
I use a straw and blew stuff on, and I use this thing
Oh,
here.
very cool.
So I made, and then I ended up, I took an elastic
Mhm.
and I bounced elastic off the painting.
Yeah, no, it's really nice, Joyce. Move it over to the center a little. It's really, really nice. I love the energy all coming diagonal like that. Really nice and great idea to use a straw. We didn't mention that technique. It's
And the
beautiful.
elastic.
Very good. Aw,
Thank you. I had so
okay.
much fun, and everything's covered in
It
pink.
is, it's a lot of fun. How about Edgar? Where are you zooming in from, Edgar?
I'm zooming in from Washington, D.C. And thank you for the,
Washington, D.C.
yeah,
Wow.
yes. So I thought about the indigenous people, the Aztecs, and so I thought I would draw a picture of the Moon Princess and the Moon Boy from 1,000 years ago, who are gazing up at the moon to recharge their powers. So let me see if I can, and I still have to paint in the flesh, but you can see the moon
Oh,
shining down upon the Moon Princess and the Moon Boy. He's got an Aztec helmet that's very quickly drawn. But anyway, so that's my beginning, and I'll continue that afterwards.
oh, I love that. And what surface did you paint that on?
I painted it on a piece of cardboard, an inexpensive, cheap piece of cardboard, following your inspiration for us.
I love the way you combine the pencil with the paint too. It's really nice. And the way around the moon, you have a little rim of the cardboard coming through, which is nice too.
Yes, yes. So I'll do some more work on it, but I'm glad to have the composition, and thank you for the inspiration today, Joyce.
My pleasure. I have a homework assignment for you. You want to know your homework assignment?
Oh, yes.
Okay, since you live in Washington, D.C., I recommend, if you haven't been there already, I just came from there. Go, it's in Maryland outside of DC. It's called Glenstone. Did you ever go there?
I don't think I have. Is it a museum?
It's
Or,
really special. It's
oh,
a
I will.
museum. It combines architecture, nature trails, and museums with art. It's all modern. It's spectacular.
Oh,
And
that's fabulous.
it's right outside of DC. I think it'll take you 30 minutes to get there. It's free.
Oh,
And
I
it's
will make a
I'm telling
point.
you'll like it. It's really special.
I'll tell them you sent me.
Okay, that's your homework. I'm just
Thank
teasing.
you.
But oh, it was extraordinary. I was so glad I made the trip there.
Well, that's high praise.
So let me know if, and of course, Washington, D.C. has the most amazing museums. I really enjoyed it.
Oh, it
So
does. I've been going since I was a kid.
a lot to see there. So, oh, and a Pollock is coming to that Glenstone. So you might want to
Oh,
wait
really?
until they have the show. Look on the
Wow.
website of Glenstone. They're going to have, it's called the Iconoclast. They're going to have an exhibit of all the great modern artists over there.
Oh,
So you might
wow. That
wanna
sounds
wait.
fabulous.
Yeah, you might want to wait for that. So, all right, but thank you very much. Let's see who
Certainly.
else would like to share. Virginia. Tell us about that one, Virginia. Can you, are you muted or unmuted?
There. Okay. I made stencils and then what I
Yeah, it's
I-
like a stamp. Mhm.
yeah, like a stencil. And then
Yeah.
I made the other stencil with the other part.
Very nice.
And then
Yeah.
I did circles with the,
Yeah, the cardboard roll.
yeah,
Very good.
cardboard, yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that's-
and yeah, very good. It turns into a form of stenciling is actually a form of printmaking, as is the stamping, right? And it's
Right.
nice. It reminds me of cave painting a little bit.
Yeah, that's what I thought too.
Yeah,
Thank you.
very nice. And I like the way you use the stencil loosely too, right? Very good.
Right. Thank you.
And how about, let's see, how about Nancy Nickel?
Hello. So I use these grasses, weeds. They're small foxtails. And I have worked over time on making trees. And this is early on when I first started. And I kept at it. And like you said, you experiment with the texture and the thickness of the paint and the different weeds and how they react. And some days you have a good day, some days not such a good day. This was not done today. This was another day. But
That's really beautiful.
it's from, I keep this to remind myself where, and I'll keep going at it. But
Yeah, that is really a good example. That's beautiful. Yeah, thank you.
that's my paintbrush.
Yeah, that is really beautiful. Yeah, it's really beautiful how you got so much variety. Very nice.
It almost looks like the wind. I was able to get the wind on this one a little bit.
Yeah.
It looks like the wind is blowing.
Very nice. And also, if anyone else wants to comment, feel free as well. You can also give feedback to any of our participants. Thank you so much, Nancy. How about Martin over there in Argentina? Anything, Martin? I don't want to put you on the spot.
No, it's like, I don't know. I didn't bring anything first, but what I just found was this. This is one of the things that comes with electronic gadgets, you see? And then what I did here was to pour with a syringe, one of these.
Oh, yeah.
This is for filling the cartridges of the printer.
Very
This is
nice. Uh-huh.
a printer thing. And I have a lot because my
great.
printer broke. So what I did was to put the painting here. I took a picture. And then afterwards, I made a stamp with this.
Very nice. Yeah, I like.
There is a lot of black because I used the three primary colors. So I got blacks, let's say. But you can see maybe some of
Yeah,
the
it's really
colors.
cool. Oh, it's beautiful. Very nice. Yeah, you see how subtle the black is.
Mhm.
Very nice. Yeah, that's beautiful, Martin. It's an ink blot.
Yeah.
It turns into an ink blot, but this is a very good example when we talk to beginners. It's black, but it's a rich black because it's really, you see all the color within. That's why don't use black from the tube necessarily.
Yeah.
Very nice. Yeah, and there's a face in there.
Yes,
I'm
we
sure
can find
that's
things,
not-
but
You see the
Yeah.
profile?
yes, but they are just by chance because I just poured it, and what I used to make some lines or thing was one of these from sculpture. I don't know in English the word for this. In Spanish, it's esteca bigatti. We call it in Spanish. We use
Sure.
it for sculpture. Yes, we do it like this to put the
Oh,
clay.
chisel? Oh, okay. I'm not sure what that's called. Yeah.
In Spanish, it's una esteca. Esteca
Mhm.
bigatti in this case. This is used for sculpture with using plasters. Yes, we use this at
Yeah.
art school. So
Uh-huh.
with this, I was just mixing because I thought that the ink was going to get dry, but no, here on this plastic, it didn't dry. So I could move it and I could make the print with the paper.
Oh, very nice. Thank you.
I
Really?
just this.
Very good. What's our Spanish word for the day? How do you say print in Spanish?
Imprimir.
What is it?
Imprimir.
Imprimir?
The verb.
Imprimir?
Imprimir. The verb.
Imprimir.
Print.
Imprimir. Sí.
Yeah. And a print, una impresión. The noun, una impresión is a print, una impresión.
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 Yes.
Could you explain your process, please, once again?
You want to
Uh,
explain it again, Martin?
if you let me share a screen, I can show the photograph, what I did.
Sure.
Yes, I did see your photograph. I want to know the process.
Yes, but what I did was to get ink with this as when I fill the cartridges for the printer with one of these and the ink, the different colors. I have magenta, cyan, cyan, I don't know, and yeah, and yellow. So I pick the colors and I drip this over this plastic. Yes, the three
Okay.
colors separated. But what I did after was as the ink was wet, I was moving it with this because
With
it
the
was
spatula.
yes, a spatula, yes, with this.
Yes.
And afterwards, I put the paper and made a print out of this ink.
Oh yeah. Oh
In the-
yeah.
This is the first print, let's say. And as there was some more ink, I did a second one, but you see that the ink was all picked by the first paper. The second
Oh
one,
yes.
that's almost
Yes.
any ink.
This is ghost copy. Yeah.
So,
Ghost copy.
Ghost.
Ghost
Ah.
copy.
yeah. Yes, something like that, yes.
Yeah.
And this is the plastic. Just this comes with a electronic attachment, a television or something, a printer. I had to buy a
Okay.
new printer.
But very good idea. Bravo.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Martin.
Thank
And
you.
you know what, everybody, you can use also, you could use a sheet of glass to do that. You could use just any sheet of plastic that doesn't absorb the ink or the paint.
Yes, normally I used to, not with this thing, but with other things we use here, this kind of plastic from X-rays studies. When
Yeah.
they are
Mhm.
used, we use this for making prints. You can use acrylics or tempered or anything, or even oil painting. You make monocopies.
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
know how do you call that in English? Monocopies.
A
No,
monoprint. Yeah.
Monochrome
pen.
printing.
Yeah, monoprint.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And someone said you could use freezer paper.
Yes,
But yeah,
but
anything
this
that's
it's
not
a
porous.
yeah. No, if it's a very thin foil, maybe it flips and it stacks. It has to be something that you can stick that it doesn't move. Maybe an acetate plate
Mhm.
like this from the X-ray studies.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Good
And
to
let's-
know.
Well, thank you so much, Martin. Who else would like to share?
There's someone that's
Okay.
put their work in the chat.
Oh, we'll get to that, Denise, and then we'll get to the chat. Mm-hmm.
Hi, well, they're still wet, but I used gloves and my fingers and I tried to use watercolor, the color of money. And these are like deposit envelopes that I use a lot for cash. And I was thinking about how whenever I'm looking at cash or touching it, I wonder how many people have touched this before me, and the color of money is such a very highly unusual, specific color. So I was sort of I used like 7 or 8 colors to kind of put fingerprints all over these envelopes. So it's like a money thing. The
Oh, I
color
like, that's a good idea.
cashola kind of thing.
Yeah, that's a really, really good idea. I like that. Very nice. It's a good concept. Very good. Thank you. And let's see what came into the chat. Hang on. Very nice, Nancy. Hang on. Let me do a little screen share. All right, Nancy, you want to tell us about this one?
That's actually me, Joyce. Shell.
Oh, Shell. Oh, okay.
Yeah, let's see what's in it. It's well, I painted the background just with a brush, and then I went over it with some cut seashells that I stamped paint on, a fern that I did the same with, and some flower seed heads that are the more mushy, sloppy texture.
Yeah, very nice. And you know what, also it shows the way you use your brush in and of itself. You could do experimental techniques with the brush itself, right? You could stipple, you could swipe, you could do all sorts of things just with a brush as well. Very nice. You're making patterns. And I see there's sort of a squeegee effect in the background. I guess you used a brush up and down.
Yep.
Yeah, but you could also do that. There's a lot of artists who do really unusual effects to drag the paint across, like using a squeegee or even a rake to get lines going across, and or you could just use a wooden stick and smear it across.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
How did you use this pattern? How did you make this pattern? May I know?
Just totally randomly, just stamp stuff where I thought it looked good.
Yes. What kind of stamp did you use?
It's actually a seashell that's been cut.
Seashell. Oh, lovely. Lovely. Thank you.
Sure.
And Marika, did you want to share something today? Hold it up a little, Marika, please. Do you want to say it? Oh, that's cool, Marika.
So it's a wooden, it's carbonly, the end of my palette sheets. And then I just put two colors, ultramarine blue and white, and then started just dropping circles and then tilting it to see. And then on the right-hand side, I did a bit of scraping.
Yeah, it's really,
the other
really
colors
beautiful.
moved in to one another.
I
Yeah.
love the way the top of it looks like the white paint is like coming from the back over the top edge. It's really beautiful. It's really cool.
Thank
You know what's funny? I once had a teacher, it reminds me, and she said, oh, you know, you have someone over your art studio and you go, this is my art. And you show them, oh, this is my serious art. And then they go, well, what's that thing over here? And then that turns out to be the most interesting. You know what I mean? Like this could turn out to be like a really interesting idea, doing different palettes and stuff, right? You could have a lot of fun with that.
Thank you.
So very good. Okay, everybody, I'll tell you what, we're not going to have time for the video that Martin mentioned. Martin, do you want to put that in the chat if people want to see that video?
Yeah, it's not a video, but I can just
The website?
yeah, it's a website, and you can move around the room, just that.
Yeah, it sounds good. Do you want to put it in the chat?
Yeah. Let me
We'll do it at a
see.
later time.
Yeah. Wait, wait a second, here is it.
Okay. And while Martin's doing that, first off, I'd like to thank Marika for co-hosting and everyone for sharing your art. And I'd like to tell you tomorrow, we're going to have a workshop about the Spanish artists, Miro and Salvador Dali, and their influence on Jackson Pollock. So we're going to discuss surrealism, and then we'll do some surrealist techniques, okay? So check pkhouse.org for all of our virtual programs, which are all free, okay? If you live in the area, we do have one more face-to-face workshop coming up on Saturday for children, okay? So let's see, let's get the website there. Turn the recording on.
Face-to-face